1 second.
Tell me when you're ready.
Record, correct?
We can get started. Tell me when you're ready. We'll get started. But only one thing I would like to say is, well, I'm a bit nervous, so I don't want to mess up the one after when we have to introduce our guest a bit. I'm a bit nervous because I don't want to mess that up. So I was thinking of passing that on to you, but I'll be all right. I'll be fine. I'm just nervous.
All right.
Can we also do introductions for this group?
Yeah, absolutely. So you want me to get started with the script?
Yeah.
Wait. Christopher, I need permission.
Let me know when you're ready.
To record.
All right, you guys are free to start.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is the Conversation Spotlights. I'm Joshua, and I'm a communication studies major, but also a theater arts minor as well.
Just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Good.
Okay, and I'm Fernando, a theater arts major. We're here as well with our group mates, Brianna and CJ.
Brianna, we couldn't hear you. But Brianna is a communication major and a theater arts major, or a theater arts minor, sorry. And I am CJ, and I'm also a theater arts major.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too.
Oh, me and Fernando both will be the interviewers for this podcast, and you know, Fernando, do you want to take this away? I'm just too nervous right now.
Okay. Yeah. So me and Yeah, so me and Josh will be the interviewers, the co-hosts for today's podcast with our special playwright guest, Marisela Orta. She is a third-generation Mexican-American playwright who happens to be said to be a quote-unquote accidental playwright. She graduated from the Iowa Playwrights Workshop with an MFA in poetry from the University of San Francisco. One of her most recent plays that she has written is her play called Somewhere, and it just opened 3 days ago at Skidmore College Theater. And now the first question that we would like to ask is kind of like, how did you find yourself or realize that you wanted to become a playwright? How did you become a quote unquote accidental playwright, as we have seen that many people tend to put that?
It was very haphazard. So I left Texas, where I grew up, to get my first master's, and I was focusing on poetry. I was a poet for a very long time. And so I went to the University of San Francisco, and it's a low residency program. So there's a lot of time for you to do other things. And I needed an on-campus job. I needed to work. So I had some income, and I found a job in the Office of Service Learning. So the thing to know about USF is it's a Jesuit institution, and they're really big on Jesuits in general, but the school as well, in trying to get the students and professors to collaborate and work with the community. And that's specifically what my department, the place I ended up getting my day job at, what they did was to try and highlight where and help professors create learning opportunities in the community. And in my first year working in that office, we were making a kind of like a promotional video, and we were interviewing the different professors who were doing work in the community. And we interviewed a theater professor who had basically with his students was working with a troupe of actors in the Mission District. It was called El Teatro Jonadero. And we went to one of the rehearsals to get footage, like B-roll, right? So we go in, and I've never been to a theater rehearsal. I've never seen or know what a movement exercise is, but I'm a poet who's very image driven, and I had to write a poem each week, and I was looking for inspiration. I was really like, I need to find things to write about. And walking into that rehearsal, and they were moving like they were all, it's hard to describe. It's like you need a picture of it, right? But for me, I was floored. I wanted to just sit in the corner and write poems. And I joined their theater company and kind of dubbed myself the resident poet. And I would write poems, about, their process and what they were doing in the room. I took photos and I ended up putting together their playbill. I just kind of became like their Girl Friday. You guys need me to go get props. I'll go to the thrift store and help find props. I even at one point ran rehearsal. So after a year of watching them devise a piece of theater, and I didn't know that that's the term, like back then I didn't know what devise theater was. I was watching them devise a piece of theater. I got curious about writing. And the thing that drew me most, I think, to theater was, as a poet, I had not figured out how to write about political themes. It was like the one subject I didn't know how to kind of write. It just felt like I was hitting people over the head with my poems. But watching them develop a piece of theater, and they were specifically, this was during, so this was right before the Second Gulf War was beginning, and they were creating a piece of theater in response to it. It basically demonstrated to me how you could create or write about political themes in a way that could reach an audience. And so that drew me, that I could write about political themes, and also empathy. The fact that they're actors undergoing some sort of struggle just feet in front of you as the audience member, like the kind of connection that an audience member can have to the characters, and then how they can not only care about the characters, but care about the situations the characters are in. And so that was very powerful for me and drew me to theater. And my first couple of plays are all, steeped, it's all about social justice issues. And that's what I was exploring my first 3 plays. And after that third play, I was kind of hooked. I was like, I love theater. It has all the things that I, did as a poet. It has imagery and metaphor and language and lyricism, and it's visual, but it's also alive. There's this really great quote by Federico Garcia Lorca. And I knew him as a poet before I realized he also wrote plays. And this quote is, a play is a poem standing up. And I just love that. It's just so true. And it's why I love theater and kind of what drew me to it. So it was all an accident, because I was like writing fiction as a child, then poetry in high school, poetry throughout college. I went to get my first MFA in poetry. And then I found my way to theater, kind of, like I said, kind of by accident.
Yeah, I feel like everyone really finds that passion in theater, as it's really able to kind of like tell a story. And then like you're kind of like you're able to resonate with like the characters sometimes, and really like be in their shoes and see what they're going through. So that's what really stands out for me with theater, and that's why I kind of wanted to get more into it as well.
All right. The second question, here comes your second question. As a playwright, what kinds of lessons did you learn through your experiences?
Lessons. I think one of the biggest lessons that I'm starting to learn now, after having done this for almost 15 years, is how to let go. And what I mean is kind of let go of things having to be a certain way. Because when you write your plays, especially your first plays, it's like you have them in your head about how they should come alive on stage. And anything that deviates from it, you're kind of like, oh, it's not the thing I had in my head. But there is something really lovely about just kind of letting go of that and letting the play have its own life. And that means opening it up to the other collaborators. The play that just opened at Skidmore is the third time I've seen that play produced. It's its fourth production, but I couldn't see the third one. So this is the third time I've seen it. And seeing how the play kind of has, what this director brought to it, made me so excited. It made the play alive in a different way. And so kind of letting things, kind of like just letting go and kind of accepting that, or hoping that this one production I'm looking at isn't going to be the last time this plays on its feet. It'll have a life of its own, and other people will bring things to it. that's kind of the thing I'm learning to do now. I hope I'm learning that. It's not easy. You know, when you have your first production of something, you want it to be exactly like you imagine it, but learning to kind of like loosen up and let go can allow the play with your collaborators to become something really unique and beautiful. So that's one of the big lessons. Other lessons. I mean, one of the things that I've always done is been very involved, like within, I've done a lot of volunteering throughout my life in different ways. Almost all of it's always been related to like my cultural background. And when I got into theater, that just felt natural. So I volunteered and joined. Well, first it was participating in Bay Area groups. There was this one salon for a while called the Feminist Theater Salon. And we would meet every month, I think. Like it was like bring food and show up, you know? And it was just people, women just wanted to meet each other and talk. Like, and I learned so much from like, oh, I did not know that actresses were dealing with this issue. So I learned a lot and met a lot of people, and they got to know me, which was great. And then when was it? It was like around 2013 that I started volunteering with Latinx Theater Commons, which is a national volunteer committee. And there's a lot of work at times, but we're all volunteering towards this movement. But I got to meet so many people. It could take 30 years to get to know all the artists that were on that committee. And I met them in 3 years. So just by becoming a member of your community, whether it's locally or nationally, and getting involved, it's not just, I mean, it's people can do it for selfish reasons of the like getting to know people and networking, but for me, that's just like the added benefit. I think if you're going to navigate a career or create a career for yourself, theater is definitely a field where you get to meet a lot of people and to kind of lean into that. And I know it's not easy if you're an introvert, because I'm an introvert, but it's definitely a skill you can develop. And to just lean in and get to know people from all over and reach out to people. So many, one of the main reasons why I really transitioned and left poetry and came to theater and playwriting was that theater embraced me in a way that poetry had not. Poetry is a very solitary, beautiful, thing, but you kind of write your poems, you hope to get them published, and maybe you go read them, and maybe you can mingle with other poets. But when I got into a developmental festival with my first play, the Bay Area Playwrights Festival. I show up to their little meet and greet before the festival, and every single person there is like, oh, Marisela, like they had read the play because they were either on the selection committee or they were another playwright. And it just felt like theater, because there's so many other people, like playwrights not necessarily, but a lot of other people are very gregarious and are very welcoming. And it just felt like theater kept saying yes to me and inviting me in. And I was like, well, I'm going to go where the universe wants me. This is the easy path, an easy choice. So I think learning to embrace kind of the very gregarious nature of our field can also mean that you can build a really beautiful career. And a lot of people are very welcoming. Like you can reach out to playwrights that you may not know, and a lot of them will respond back, or other theater makers. So
I agree. Like, as in, a lot of what you said, I feel like I could relate to it. When you said about letting go, I feel like as an actor, like for me, I set the bar really high, so obviously when I'm bringing a character to life or something, it doesn't go quite as I planned or something, or, or during rehearsal, or I rehearse something over and over, then we have to do 2 performances or something like that. And I miss a word, so I have to improvise. So I'm too hard on myself, but then I'm also doing what you're doing, which is learning to let go. And this is all accepting that it's all a part of the process and it's all a part of bringing a character's life. So I can relate to that. And I agree also getting involved too, because I feel like a lot of your points I can relate to, because I found that getting involved with my community, even when I came from community college, I just came and, getting involved at San Jose State, and even gonna get involved in the community, the acting theater near my place. It's because I'm going to keep acting and I'm never going to stop. So I agree with you. And it's like, yeah, pretty much. I feel like your question, what you said, I could really relate to. So yeah.
That's great.
Um, and then as we move on, I wanted to move down to a question that one of our group members kind of looked into, and it was what is like your favorite like Brothers Grimm fairy tale, and why were some
Oh,
implemented in plays like The River Bride and Wolf at the Door?
oh gosh. I don't know if I never really thought about like a favorite fairy tale, but I mean, I remember learning that the fairy tales I first heard were very sanitized. And when I was like, oh, what is this Brothers Grimm? Like I was really drawn to this idea of like that stories for children could be dark, that they could be scary even. So some of the fairy tales that have stayed with me the longest aren't necessarily like my favorites because of this. Maybe it's because they've left the deepest impressions, like, or they scared me the most. Like the story about the red dancing shoes, where the girl puts on the red shoes and she can't stop dancing, and someone actually has to chop her feet off. It's really scary. Yeah, it's scary. It's kind of terrible too when you think about it, because it's like he gives her a pair of metal feet and then marries her. It's sort of like chopping off a woman's ability to do things and making her a wife. And I was like, hold your horn, hold the horses, like hold the phone. No, I don't think so. But I think I find that I'm very drawn to tragic, tragic stories. And so stories like the original Little Mermaid, which is super sad. She doesn't get the prince in the end. That's Disney, So those kinds of things, I'm really drawn to those stories. But I think Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid are kind of like some of my favorite ones.
And going off of that question, what was like your experience at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival like with River Bride?
That was so the production of The River Bride at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, that was its world premiere. That was back in 2016. I found out about that production right as I was applying to graduate school. And so when I was interviewing for graduate school, one of the questions I asked the department was like, the rehearsal process at OSF is a 2-month process. I would really love to be there and to learn, because that would be an amazing opportunity. What was so great about Iowa is that they let me do it. They were like, what we're going to do is you're going to do a residency semester. You can spend 2 months at OSF doing the rehearsal process. When you come back, you need to present us with a production journal. So keep a journal and then come back, you'll do a little presentation, tell us what you learned. And at first I didn't know what to write down. So every day I was writing down, okay, this scene, we're doing that scene. And slowly over the course of a couple of weeks, I realized, okay, I'll highlight the challenges or the questions that come up. And I can then identify, here are the potential pitfalls that a director later on who wants to direct The River Bride, here's a little thing, here are the challenges that we found in that world premiere. That way you can kind of like go into your process already targeting some of these moments and knowing that this scene is a particular bear. It's really hard to do, and here's why. That was, I think, one of the most formative productions for me, because it was 2 months of rehearsal. So we spent so much time working on the play, and I got to continue to work on it. And I was even working on one of this, like, couple of scenes, and refining them and honing them. I learned a lot about direction, in the sense that I was working with a really fantastic director, Lori Woolery, and watching her work in the room. I learned that when you have a collaborator that you kind of sync up with, who sees your play the same way you do, but also helps you see the play in a different, like better, almost a way, like Lori does that with my work. She can see it in a way that makes me go, oh my gosh, I didn't know that was there. I'm so glad you tell me you can see this stuff. So it was 2 months of rehearsal, which is a much longer process than you see anywhere else when you talk about professional productions. Most of the time you get 3, maybe 4 weeks if you're lucky. 4th week is usually tech. So it's so much faster. So we got to spend a lot more time in the world. And of course, a place like OSF has tremendous resources financially. And so, I mean, there was a trap door that opens up at the end, you know, and people were like spinning down into it at the end. Beautiful set. There's a canoe, because it's on the banks of the Amazon River. There's a canoe. They had a motorized canoe, like they actually had a little canoe that they could drive around stage. So it was tremendously satisfying to have that kind of support in the world premiere. One of my favorite memories, though, of OSF is when we finally had audiences, because the audience was very vocal. It was almost like they were watching some, like, have you ever watched a movie and people talk back at the screen? Well, people were like gasping and going, oh no, you know, things like that. It was so satisfying to have my work in front of so many people and to see them react to it and love it was super satisfying. So that was a great experience. And I hope to have another experience like that again.
Well, it really does sound like a great experience. It sounds like there was a lot of support and relationships built around that time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Here's the third question. If you were freely given a superpower which would help you personally and then also help you as a playwright with your skills, what superpower would you choose that would help you?
I think it would have to be about focus. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I could have, if I could just sit down and do the work, I might be twice as productive. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I need that time where I'm thinking about the fact that I'm not working to kind of have the ideas marinating. Because that also is work when you're just imagining or just letting your ideas kind of like germinate in your head. But sometimes, I mean, and that's also, I mean, I shrug as I say this, because that mindset of we have to be this productive, we have to, you know, crank things out. Maybe that's not the best mindset. You know, some people naturally are that focused and that productive, and I mean, good for them. But comparing ourselves to other people always is going to make you kind of feel like you see deficits only in your own abilities or productivity or what have you. So, but sometimes I'm like, what would it be like if I stopped watching Futurama and it was like actually just writing all the time? Is that too much? Would I burn out faster? Who knows?
I was gonna say that you would actually, you know, if you ever know, you've seen the show Flash, where he has super speed so you can read really fast. So I was thinking it wouldn't hurt to have like super speed, because then you could read really fast or do like two things at once. Like you could, like, you know, tell someone this over another and then like read a script, and then, you know, because you're super quick. So I was just thinking that, you know, I was just throwing that out there. You could consider super speed.
I think with any superpower, there's always going to be like the other side of the coin. Like if your superpowers, like if you're super focused and you're working all the time, does that mean that you're missing out on the hike through nature, that you're not connecting with the outside? Or, you know, so who knows? I think there's always, and some things can be like a double-edged sword, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I agree. Like you can be super fast, but then that person who's having the ability to read and do stuff super fast, they're missing the process.
Yeah, they're missing the slowdown moments that they may need.
Oh yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So something I was going to mention was that so you just for this question you mentioned focus. I do feel like a lot of people tend to really like get distracted with so many things nowadays. Maybe not like more than before. I feel like that happens to me, and I feel like to so many other individuals nowadays, and that's what really keeps us like not as focused as we want to be, like with what we're actually working on. So
I think that's
feel like,
accurate. I think you're right. I think we've got a lot more coming at us, like, and a lot more that could potentially kind of pull our focus. I have a playwriting mentor who went on a writing retreat where it was one of those silent retreats, and your phone or anything like that, no TV.
Yeah.
She wrote a novel, like, because suddenly there was space in her mind for something new to kind of creep in. And so sometimes I think about that, like maybe I should, like, if you push away from some of these things that in some ways connect us, but maybe we need the space and take a walk. There's this very old tradition of philosophers taking walks every day. They're and that's when they would think out and think through like the things that they end up writing later. So taking time away to just sort of even just sit in silence, like what finds its way into your mind, like what characters, what like lines of dialogue, like things I think can be creep in if we let it.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Another question wanted to kind of go into was what made you like or what like pushed you to or like attracted you to want to do more like political and social justice themes in some of your like playwriting scripts?
So that was I mean, that's political theater is what drew me to theater. I, as a poet, found that I just couldn't find the right way to express how I felt about political themes. I just felt like it was preaching to the choir, or hitting somebody over the head. It just didn't feel nuanced enough to me, or I didn't know how to express it. So I just didn't write about those things. And when I joined El Teatro Jornalero and they were doing exactly that, writing political theater, it was like, oh, this is a way that I can express it. This is that I am interested in expressing and exploring these themes, these issues that are impacting my community. The first play I ever wrote was about the femicide in Ciudad Juarez. And I learned about it when I was living in the Bay Area, and I was very shocked because I'm from Texas. And I was like, why is nobody reporting about this? It made me very mad that no one was, it was like covered up, nobody was talking about these women and what was happening. And their workers, I mean, those are American factories on the Mexico side of the border, taking advantage that they can pay people a lot less money. And then their workers are disappearing. And if that happened on this side of the border, I'd like to think that there would be an out, people be like holding these companies accountable. And so I use theater to kind of like shine a light on that issue, or to talk about it, and to also talk about kind of like, for me, when I first heard about that story, it reminded me of things I had learned when I studied Latin American history. It reminded me of the conquest of the Aztecs. So like creating a metaphor, the destination of the continent, because the Spanish came to how capitalism is affecting Latin America, especially as it's coming from like American companies coming in for cheap labor. So I can't remember what your question is. If I'm rambling, I feel like I'm rambling.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
What was
Yeah,
the question again?
it was the question was what made you attracted to want to do political and social justice themes in some of your playwriting scripts?
And I think the other part of the answer then is empathy. This idea that theater exercises our empathy because we identify with a human, the actor that's a character that's only feet away from us. And empathy is a very powerful thing. And if we can get people to care about each other and to be able to identify with people that have lives very different from their own, I think that's worthwhile.
One question, now the next question I'll ask is of all the scripts you've done, which one seems to resonate with you the most, and why?
This is a hard one. That's really tough. I'll say that for the longest time, my favorite play, it's hard because it's sort of like children, you saying which one's your favorite, right? But my favorite for a really long time has been Heart-Shaped Nebula. It's set in Texas. It has a lot of astronomy. I love astronomy and Greek mythology. And I grew up loving Greek mythology. My characters, two of them are Texans, and it's a love story. So for those reasons, it's been a favorite of mine because it's very visual. You see a lot of stuff in the nighttime sky, the constellations kind of come to life in a way. So that's been like a favorite for a long time. But another favorite, I think the one that's kind of like creeping into my favorites now is my one of my new plays, December. And it's a two-hander, but it uses 4 actors because it jumps in time. And so I need older versions of the characters pop in, towards the end of the play to play the roles. And it's just people talking about poetry and having a conversation and flirting on stage. And I think I love it because I finally wrote a scene that's like 30 pages, 30 minutes, For me, my first play as a poet, I didn't know what I was doing. Most of those scenes are like 2 pages, 3 pages. The second 2 plays I was writing, I was like, oh, I wrote a 10-minute scene. Like it was it was an accomplishment. Like I was learning how to create a conversation and write something that could be sustained and be interesting. So to get to a point where I'm writing now like a 40-page scene, it's like I can pat myself on the back a little bit. But I also love that they're talking about poetry. It's sort of like coming full circle with that play.
Yeah. Like I agree with you. I think that like in terms of because back when I was in community college, I was in the Freedom Writers Club, which is we were writing club, we poetry, we also did some acting too. So it was like I agree that like we did, if you had to ask me if there was anything that we did that resonated with me the most, it would be hard for me to pick, but I do obviously have that one that I can connect with. So a lot of what you're saying I feel like I can relate to. And yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Cool.
Now it does. Now we did have some more questions, but it seems that we're coming to a close. So first off, we just want to say thank you, Marisela, for taking the time out of your day to come out and be here with us today. We also want to say thank you to Professor Normington for setting all of this up for us. And like nothing would have been possible without those efforts. And lastly, we just wanted to kind of ask you if there's any like upcoming projects that you're working on that you'd like to share with us.
So one of my fairy tale plays, Wolf at the Door, I'm currently adapting it into a screenplay. It got published last year by Sam French, and the company that owns Sam French, Concord, has a TV and film department. And so they basically are paying me to develop it into a screenplay. And that's been super exciting, but also huge learning experience because film is I had to completely break apart the play. Play is mostly dialogue, lots of monologues, and learning how to tell the story with more visuals, has been really fascinating and exciting. So yeah, I've started that process. It should be finished. Probably the first draft of that screenplay should be finished sometime like I don't know, early spring, late winter. And then who knows where we'll go from there. But it's been exciting to kind of learn how to write a screenplay. So.
And then you had also mentioned the play or something you were working on called December. Is that recently new or? Yeah.
It's pretty new. I was in residency at the Goodman Theater in Chicago for a year right after grad school. And I wrote that play as part of that year with them. I think it was like in maybe 2019, it had a reading in the summer hosted by the Goodman because they had all of our plays had readings, all the playwrights that were in the playwrights unit. So so I've got like a couple of drafts in and it's had a couple of readings, but and then the pandemic happened. So hopefully I'll find a home for it soon.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been fun. It was really nice talking to you, getting to learn about all these things.
Thank you so much for your questions.
Yeah, and I felt like even all of us here, like we could anyone even would watch this recording. I feel like as theater arts, majors and minors and passion for acting. It's like I feel like we could all relate to what you're saying, because I found it really. I was kind of starstruck by a lot of your responses. I felt like I could relate to it in a lot of ways. So I was just like, whoa, like that's crazy. So it's just like, yeah, pretty much.
Thank you. Well, it was really great to participate, and thanks for reading my play and for all of your questions. I appreciate it.